why we started the DPF. The lifeblood of any movement is ideas, is intellectual content. As a fourth generation Dravidian movement member, I felt upon returning after 30 years as an expat and coming into electoral politics that in some ways we had lost our intellectual founding, a party and a movement, or many parties, the DK, the DMK, or associations, the Justice Party, who had thrived on intellectual content as the basis, had suddenly reached a stage where that seemed to be a bit declining. So, in an attempt to correct that, we tried various initiatives, including in the IT wing. The DMK has, in some ways, started to focus a lot more on content. அதுக்கு அப்பாற்பட்டு சமுதாயத்தில் இந்த கொள்கைகள், இந்த அடிப்படை தத்துவம் எதற்காக பண்றோம் என்றதற்கு இன்னும் பரவலாக போகணும் என்ற ஒரு விருப்பத்துடன் back in May 2019 we started this initiative. It was a bit overwhelming in light of the elections and so forth. We felt a bit backed up. So after a lot of inputs, இந்த முறை ஒரு மறுமுயற்சியாக ரீலான்ச் தலைவர் தளபதியோடைய ஆசியுடன் ஒரு எக்ஸிக்யூட்டிவ் கமிட்டியை உருவாக்கி we started from that. This is a topic that's very close to my heart for multiple reasons, even though I myself am in a forward category and have had to come through the open quota in every place that I've come up. It is a topic close to my heart for many reasons. திராவிட இயக்கத்துடைய அடிப்படை கொள்கை சமூக நீதி, எல்லோருக்கும் வாய்ப்பு, எல்லோருக்கும் கல்வி என்ற அடிப்படையிலும், and personal reasons. Many of my family, forefathers and distant relatives like Mutaya Moliar worked hard on these concepts. Of course, we realize that reservations, or what they call quotas in the US, of course, we realize that in the short term, they can be inefficient. They can result in people who otherwise come with centuries or millennia of privilege not being able to get enough seats. That is an accepted outcome. That is a known outcome. It is not a surprising or shocking or something that we try to push under the carpet. It is short-term inefficient to do reservations or quotas, but we are happy to pay that price as a movement, as a society, because there have been built into the thousands of years of our culture a hierarchy and a system that provides privilege that simply cannot be overcome any other way. And the two biggest efficiencies or long-term gains to argue why we should take the short-term inefficiencies or costs of reservations are the value of a munnudarnam, of an example, of a light to look up to, and the value of mentorship. And these are the long-term values that are needed to lift any community, any family, any society in any street. I'll give you just two examples, one in my constituency and one a personal example. In my constituency, the first year I got elected MLA, I invited all the top rankers of the corporation schools to give them scholarship money. All three of them, despite being particularly bright, despite being particularly successful, of course, came from very poor backgrounds, very limited exposure, and none of them knew what to do next. All three of them said, I want to do computer science. And when I asked them, though they tried to give me various answers, it became apparent they just didn't know any better. They had not received any career counseling. They didn't know any examples of people in their streets, in their neighborhoods who had gone on to do other things like being a chartered accountant or a lawyer or a chef or a banker. And so they did whatever they thought was the easiest way to lift from this level to the next level. My personal example, when I was finishing at NIT Trichy, what was then REC, not a small college, not a poor family, with every advantage in the world, when my father insisted that I applied to the US to go to college, I really had no idea which was which. There was no email, there was no internet, there was no easy access to information as there exists now. And basically, we ended up in a situation where I applied. I had fantastically good scores by God's grace. I got admission wherever I applied, but I didn't know where to apply. And once I got in, I didn't realize that the weather and the outcome was going to be different in Buffalo, New York compared to Los Angeles, compared to Boston, Massachusetts. So the only reason I went to Buffalo, New York was that I had a Munnudarnam. I had a family friend who was an old Laurentian who had been an IIT Kharagpur topper and who was at State University of New York. So I figured if he has gone, it must be good enough for me to go. That was the extent of my awareness. So despite the privileges of caste, of money, of standing, the limitations of knowledge led to that outcome. Now, the irony of it is, about 5 years ago, I was back in my university as a guest at a function, and I ran into my professor who had been dean and was now some vice president in the university. And he told me that back in your day, we used to get people like you. We used to get IIT toppers. We used to get REC toppers because the system was not as stratified as it is today. In the age of perfect information transference, in the age of the internet, in the age where everybody knows what rank and what school will get you where, people like you only go to MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Michigan. They don't come to schools like ours. Even though this is universities rank, let's say 20, 30, 40, 50. They say what we get is Indian students who have come from 10-year, 20-year, 30-year private universities who are willing to pay full fees and who we make sure gets employment. So the system has already stratified. ஒரு புது அடுக்குமுறை உருவாகி விட்டது. And this is captured very nicely by the recent book, The Tyranny of Merit, by Michael Sandel, the philosophy professor at Harvard University. That even in the presence of full information, very quickly a hierarchy forms, and the notion of merit substitutes for the notion of caste or class and starts to set up me, my son, my grandson, my great-grandson, and so forth. So the principles of reservation, the principles of continuously striving to ensure that the elite opportunities or the better opportunities, in fact, all opportunities are given proportionally to the people in the society as a way of ensuring social mobility and agreeing that social mobility, at least across generations, within a generation, is the basis for having a just and fair society rather than creating new hierarchies. For that reason, at a very personal level, I have both experienced the consequences of a lack of Munnudarnam, the lack of mentorship, and realized how quickly information overcomes and fills the void, and how the power of capitalism and of money and of privilege and in different societies, caste or class, can easily re-establish the order even when something disruptive comes, like global information or a global education system. So in that sense, this is a very, very important initiative, one of many that we have hoped to undertake. We have already had one session on the coronavirus. We have this as the next major session. I think it will be a very, very useful debate and a very useful exchange of ideas. இங்கே கருத்து கூறுவதற்கும் பங்கேற்பதற்கும் வந்த அனைவருக்கும் என் நன்றியையும் என் வணக்கத்தையும் தெரிவித்து நான் என் உரையை முடித்துக் கொள்கிறேன். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.